Books stick with you for different reasons. Some are stuffed with such imagination that their swelling weight leaves a mark. Some contain a particular moment or description that's so joyful or horrifying or specific that it lives with you forever. And some special books capture the timbre of a deeply held emotion so well that they might as well already be living inside of you. There are many books on my shelf that I hold in high esteem, but one that stands out to me is in this last category. Our Wives Under the Sea is the debut novel by Julia Armfield. I've seen it categorized in many ways that are technically true but feel inaccurate. Horror, be it gothic or cosmic, a slow burn mystery, magical realism. Descriptions that feel more accurate posit that it tells the tale of trauma or perpetual transformation. But all in all, to me, it's a beautifully layered and realized depiction of grief and loss. The loss of Our Wives Under the Sea isn't quick. There's no clean break. It lives in a salty, slow descent into the abyss. An abyss that lives equally below crashing surf and between two people who have been changed in fundamentally different ways. I first read Our Wives Under the Sea 3 years ago. As I was gearing up for a production for a video about it, rereading the book, noting bits that stand out with a full view of the thematic ground the story covers, and struggling to write about and do justice for a book poetic in its prose such that I come away from it with similes bouncing around inside my skull. I learned that Our Wives Under the Sea was no longer Julia Armfield's only novel. Private Rites, released in 2024, tells the story of a slow apocalypse and a cult trying to prevent it. But really it's not. It's a book about loss and grief and love and hope and sisterhood and the slow slipping away. These two books are shockingly similar in their moods, their prose, their structures, and even some of the quirky components of their stories. The themes and subjects of Armfield's work are sharply focused, and in some ways so specific, they feel cherry-picked like an internal poetic cyst that I felt yearning to escape out into the world, but that I lack the capacity or language to assist. Trust me, I see the obvious irony of this project here. There is a pervasive dampness that spills out of Armfield's novels that binds all, sweeping unknown thoughts and unexpectedly visceral emotions in and out with each chapter, like a tide slowly decorating a beach with kelp, stones, and shells. Something quite brave about both of these books is how they pitch their mystery or their horror as a tantalizing thread early on, reinforce its presence throughout, and then consequently focus on nearly everything else until the very end, when the reveal feels more incidental than anything. When I say that Our Wives isn't really gothic horror, I'm sort of burying the lead. It definitely is a gothic horror story. However, if you were to pitch it to someone purely looking for some sweet claustrophobic spooks, like, say, Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, they may be disappointed. Similarly, pitching Private Rites as an apocalypse story, or even a daytime horror cult thriller, would probably set incorrect expectations. The true meat of these stories lie in specific feelings that Armfield seems laser-focused on. These don't exist in the cosmic horror of deep-sea creatures beyond our understanding, and a scientific center that disappears in a puff, smelling only of burning meat. Neither do they exist in the unsafety of a house, with no lock, or in occult scribbles appearing in a place once thought to be known. Those are too exciting, eventful, cathartic even, despite any horror or tragedy contained within. What takes up the bulk of the several hundred-odd pages of these two novels instead is a mundane, even lackadaisical journey of watching something precious slip away, while not having the ability to fight it anymore. It's the hot, stagnant air of re-entering a car parked outside a specialist's office on a sunny day. The appointment is over, but the only real thing that you've been told is that the problem you came here to address definitely exists. Best case, there's a dozen more tests you could go elsewhere to get that may send you to yet another person. Worst case, they tell you to keep doing the things you're already doing, even though the condition's suffocating grip has only tightened since you started. This slow slippage is present in Leah's condition in Our Wives, and in a handful of ways in Private Rites, but most obviously in that text, through the ceaseless downpour that's drowning the world. The progression from, let's do everything to fix this, slowly bleeding into the disassociation of trying to stay afloat, while necessarily accepting the new reality, is one that hits very close to home. A resonance that is sold fully flavored with a relatable despair through the strong character writing and dimension of the characters. The leads of these books are brought to life through their relationships, both romantic and sororal, and sometimes parental. Our Wives dives deep into the widening gulf between wives Miri and Leah. with the types of one-liners and reflections that knock my socks off even when read secondhand from my notebook. The poignancy of this text is in Leah's new chronic condition, a gift from her last 6-month dive under the sea. This set of events alone adds a depth to the processing of Miri's grief that gives such texture, which makes it easy to map onto your own experiences. There's the first 3 weeks of expected absence, followed by a stretching and hoping. Then, once Leah has returned, there's a whole new part of missing and losing as she came back wrong. I've read about many people's relationship with this novel, in addition to pondering my own reading of Leah's dissolution, and it is fascinating how much people see totally different reflections in the work, like shards of different perspectives projected at once in the overlapping patterns of deep ocean waves. I personally approach the text through the lens of chronic illness, whereas others talk about wedges driven by trauma or realizing that a partner isn't who you thought anymore. Everyone I've seen agrees, however, that it's a story about grieving the living, even though they are still very present in your life. Private Rites covers a wider swath of themes regarding love with its 3 romantic relationships, bridging 3 points along their arc: 1 new love, 1 solid partnership being tested by worsening conditions, and 1 marriage just shattered by divorce. There's more emotional ground to cover in other areas in Private Rites, and I find its investigation of love to be a bit shallower, yet still sharp and insightful in its own ways. Some similar to Our Wives and some fresh on its own. That being said, the ground covered in Our Wives lays a wonderful foundation that enriches these themes in Private Rites. Many of the dynamics present across the 3 couples we've seen before, explored more thoroughly in the relationship between Leah and Miri. This similarity lets the reader fill in more between the lines and maintains a perspective of similar depth on this side of the text through its intertextuality. The room made by this focal choice makes space to explore the sisterly relations between the 3 leads, in addition to their complicated paternal relationship, and the slow slipping away of the world itself. Perhaps I find Private Rites slightly less hard-hitting due to its lesser intersection with my existence. I have not been part of a sisterly bond, nor are my parents famous architects. The slow destruction of the world as a present but intractable thing is probably what stood out to me most within the text, but the power of that aspect of the story emerges from its intentional backgrounding. The rain, the flood, and the collapse are all incidental at best to the falling apart more close to home. In that vein, a word that occurred to me as I was reading Our Wives is happenstantial. The style of writing is such that it makes everything feel incidental, dreamlike, an undeniable reality that yet feels so distant. This is a core feature of the Slipping Armfield documents, and its saturation in her prose sets these 2 books apart in their power. That aspect of the writing is part of what contributes to these stories feeling so real and so raw to so many people. The happenstantial and poetic nature, the majority of the text, also lend even more weight to the solid parts, the last bastions of certainty, like when Miri breaks down and flat out says how much she misses her wife. There are some other funny similarities between the 2 texts, like a tangent taken regarding people on online forums trying to live out some escapist reality. I found the Astronaut Wives forum in Our Wives Under the Sea to have a bit more depth to it, but I found them both to be an amusing exploration of the themes. But yeah, that's a lot of my thoughts. Both books have stuck with me, and I find their ability to map a deep emotional reaction onto many a reader fascinating. I saw that Armfield's next book will be releasing in the spring of 2027, and I'm curious if it'll be like these 2 texts, a part of their own metatext, or something completely different altogether.
Don't know, did I lose my mind?